Today's computer shenanigans are brought to you by Squarespace. But more on that in a bit. Today, we're taking a look at this rather peculiar Kaypro 4, which I picked up after noticing that someone had hacked a hard drive into this previously dual floppy 1984 portable. Which got me curious. What other interesting modifications might be lurking within? And when I opened this thing up, oh my god, I was not disappointed. This thing is one cursed Kaypro, so stay tuned. And if you enjoy computers that aren't even Y1K compliant, I hope you'll consider subscribing to the channel. There's plenty more beefy 80s computing goodness where this behemoth came from, so it's definitely worth sticking around. If you're not familiar with the Kaypro, I don't blame you. Kaypro's height of popularity was in the mid to late 80s, and they'd gone kaput by 1992. In fact, their last real claim to fame was in 1999, where it was featured in an episode of King of the Hill.
I want to make sure it's Y2K compliant because Peggy's Kaypro evidently is not.
Kaypro? That wasn't Y1K compliant.
Anyway, I've always been a huge fan of these original Kaypros. They were kind of groundbreaking, competing with portable CP/M machines like the Osborne 1 with its hilariously tiny screen. The Kaypro brought a big, beautiful, crisp green CRT for all of your CP/M 2.2 goodness. And it had decent specs too. This 1984 Kaypro 4 came with a 4 MHz Z80 CPU, 64K of RAM, 2K VRAM, and that beautiful 9-inch 80-column CRT display. This model has 2 serial ports, 1 parallel port, and hey, even a modem. It also came with 2 5¼ double-sided, double-density half-height floppy drives, though you probably noticed that this one is a little bit different. We'll get to that in a bit. There were a whole bunch of Kaypro models in the CP/M era before they switched to IBM compatibles, sort of, with a host of extremely confusing names. The original was called the Kaypro 2. Legend has it that this was a silly marketing decision to compete with the Apple II. This was followed, of course, by the Kaypro 4 with Roman numerals, not to be confused with the Kaypro number 4, which this thing is, which came later. Then there was the Kaypro 10, which came after the Kaypro 2 with Roman numerals, not to be confused with the Kaypro 2, the number 2. Totally normal computing. Anyway, this Kaypro 4 comes to us highly modified, and though it now boots off of this hard drive directly to CP/M, it wasn't always that way. So let me open this thing up and show you what I found inside. And then I'll tell you the story of why I believe that this thing is, or was, cursed. But first, a word from the sponsor of today's video, Squarespace. Create a fast, beautiful, and rich web experience for your business or brand using Squarespace's powerful all-in-one platform. It's really easy to get started. Like, say I wanted to build a website all about the Kaypro modding scene, and hopefully I'm not the only one left. Not only could I build it in minutes with Squarespace, but it would be well-designed, responsive, and mobile-friendly. There's a ton of beautiful templates that I could choose to start from. And from there, it's simple to build a great-looking site that's also fast, responsive, and mobile-friendly. With Squarespace's extensive built-in toolset, I can also optimize for SEO, manage a mailing list, check my analytics, and much more. All geared towards managing your entire web presence. So check out squarespace.com/actionretro today for a free trial. And when you're ready to launch, use code ActionRetro to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Oh, and I'm working on this Kaypro as part of Maypro. As you probably know, I'm a total sucker for those month, name, pun, vintage computer events, and yeah. So this is Kaypro for Maypro. Let's take this thing apart. You gotta love how easy this thing comes apart. I mean, it's just sheet metal. It's like working on a car. But yeah, come over here, And check this out. Look at this. Look at this spaghetti craziness going on inside this Kaypro with this breadboard here. Yeah, I was totally shocked to open this thing up and see not just this breadboard and all of these wires going to all sorts of lifted pins and stuff on this highly modified Kaypro 4, but there's also meticulous handwritten notes all over the place. And in fact, if you look in a number of places on this machine, you'll see the name T.L. Adams. And that's what I love so much about this particular Kaypro. It must have been so loved by this one person who put so much effort and sweat and tears. And how do you figure this out in the days before the internet to do this kind of a mod? It's amazing. So yeah, hats off to you, T.L. Adams. And I'm going to take good care of this machine. And yeah, I'm going to try to get this back to the state that you probably left it in all those years ago. And yeah, we're going to have to replace some capacitors that exploded on this breadboard here. And I'm also going to replace some of these wires because, yeah, some of these got pretty toasty. But yeah, let me show you some funny stuff in here. Come on, you're going to have to get even closer to look inside this machine. Well, first off, notice that, yeah, there's part of a sticker of Mr. Javmeister himself. That was not original to the machine. The little sticker on top of this ROM fell off, and since I don't want it to be erased, I cut out Jav's face and stuck that on top. But anyway, just look at this board, and when you pull it off, you discover that this chip on this spacer here, it's just a pass-through. The only purpose of this is to stand this little board up over top of the rest of the components. And this is original duct tape. And there's just so much going on here. I mean, all these wires going to all these different places. There's some sort of a control over here on this chip that nobody was able to figure out. And then let's take the motherboard out and look at some even more hilarious stuff in here. And again, just marvel at the vastness of this case. It's absolutely amazing just how much room there is in here for shenanigans. And yeah, Mr. T.L. Adams took full advantage. Look, here's his name right here, property of T.L. Adams. I salute you, sir. He even wrote good on this power supply, so probably he ran into a failed one. But yeah, look right here. This is actually to control the MFM hard drive, and it's out of one of the more recent IBM compatible Kaypros. So yeah, he backported it into this CPM Kaypro 4, and the ingenuity of engineers. Look, there's Legos as spacers. And yeah, some of these screws were loose and the Legos were falling out. And actually, I found Legos in the bottom of the case here. And I think that's what was preventing it from booting. I think this hard drive controller was just shorted out. And when we took it apart and put it back together at VCF, that's what fixed it. So yeah, just incredibly cool. All of this customization. And it's just like working on a hot rod here. Big old metal chassis, cool stuff under the hood, putting in a supercharger. So cool. And yes, I know these yellow batteries are a ticking time bomb, so yeah, we're going to take that out right now. Okay, now let me tell you the story about how this thing miraculously started booting again. It all started on an unseasonably warm April afternoon deep in the heart of New Jersey. It was VCF East, and I had a display set up with Steve from Mac 84 and Mike from Mike's Mac Shack. We had mostly Macs, but I also brought along my sick, heavily modified Kaypro 4. It wouldn't boot past a plus perfect ROM upgrade splash screen of sorts that I didn't really understand, and I was hoping to find a Kaypro aficionado there who could tell me what that weird breadboard mod thing is and what it was actually doing, and why it wouldn't boot from the hard drive, and if that was even possible. I met a ton of smart people there, and some of them were nice enough to poke around inside this thing. N Commander, a fellow Kayproer, and who also knows way more about CPM than I do, and also DOS Dude 1, who knows way more about, well, everything than I do. And it was the incomparable Tech Knight of WeatherStar fame who figured out what that breadboard is actually trying to do. In fact, it's part of a RAM upgrade, a homebrew RAM upgrade that TL Adams installed in this thing. There's a couple of higher capacity memory chips where the normal memory went, and this breadboard is designed to allow the computer to access the higher registers of the memory. Now that's a little bit punching above my pay grade, but I think I understand, and I know that's darn cool. So in an effort to investigate this thing more completely, we decided to completely disassemble it and tried to make sure that none of those Lego spacers that are in there were causing any shorts with any screws that were hanging off, and, you know, just take it apart and clean the contacts. David from PDP-8 Online was at the show, and he makes this sweet MFM emulator / imager gizmo that does all kinds of stuff, including emulating an MFM hard drive and imaging your existing MFM hard drive into a disk image. And his software can even see what's on that disk image. It's so cool. And using that method, we found that there was a full CPM install on this thing and tons of files and directories with all kinds of stuff. Excited, I rushed back to our booth to put the Kaypro back together again. It was at this moment that Javier from 8-Bit Tees gave me this candle. A candle with his own image on it. See, that's Javier right there. What a humble fellow. It's a candle that one is supposed to burn when a computer doesn't boot in order to summon the spirit of soldering itself. And guess what? Guess freaking what?
Your distance, folks. That click was a little scary.
It always does that.
It always does that.
Hey. Oh, it's doing more stuff.
Oh, CPM!
Oh, shit.
Yay!
It's booting.
Holy crap! Initialize. Yes. No.
Holy. Wait. Initialize. Oh, it's
RAM drive.
RAM drive. Yes. It's alive. Holy shit. Holy shnikes. This thing worked. We put this computer back together with Javier's candle sitting right next to it, and it boots. It boots into CPM immediately, right from the hard drive. It was incredible. So what I want to do, sorry Javier, is, well, show you CPM a little bit on this thing because it's pretty interesting, and then take it apart again. I want to clean up some of the wiring, some of those scorch marks and the burning, some of those exploded capacitors. I got a whole bunch of caps that should be able to replace that stuff, and, well, see if it still works after that and see if it does anything different. I don't actually know how to check the memory to see if it's seeing all that memory. Maybe we'll try to figure that out too, but yeah. Let's bring the cursed Kaypro back to its most cursed vision, the vision of JL Adams. Okay, let's explore a little bit of what's on this machine and play around in CPM, because honestly, I was just as surprised by what I found when this thing finally booted up as I was when I first opened this thing up. And I've got the lights dimmed a bit in here so you can really see this beautiful, crisp, green CRT. So let me flip the switch in the back. Hard drive is noisily spinning back to life. There's the ROM boot screen. Booting into CPM with 61.75K. I'm not sure if that's the RAM upgrade. I'll have to look. And then look at this. This is Tom Adams right here. That's the same TL Adams that we've seen written all over this case. And look at that. Saudi Arabia. This machine traveled the world. How amazing is that? So we'll click yes to I think, initialize a RAM disk, maybe. And then we're in CPM, which is a lot like DOS, but a little bit different. A lot of people say DOS is a CPM clone originally, but yeah, instead of directories, we have user areas, kind of. So we start out in user area 0. If we type in user 1, now we're in user area 1 on the A drive, or I think A partition in this case, so we can do dir, and there's everything in this partition or user space, and we can go to user 2 dir, and this is full of games and save files for games. Look at that. He was playing Adventure, and here's his Adventure save file. If we do dir star.com, we can see just the executables. And yeah, we have Adventure, Chess, D-Draw 20, which is a lot of fun, Zork, Backgammon. So if we want to play a little Adventure, we can hop on in. ADV. Instructions, nope. Alright, enter house. Get food. Eat food. Alright, that's a lot of fun. But now my favorite game on here is D-Draw 20. Well, check this out. It's like a Kaypro Etch-a-Sketch. With all kinds of options to draw stuff, fill the screen, draw shapes like circles and stuff. I can't believe something like this existed for the Kaypro. It says it's D-Draw for Epson printers, so I guess this is the Photoshop of its day for desktop publishing. And then there's also a B drive. And the B drive was evidently used for storage. So applications were on the A drive, and then everything he saved from those applications went to the B drive, to, I suppose, the corresponding user area. Oh yeah, and tons of basic stuff. Games, Hunt the Wumpus, lots of cool stuff. Okay, so that'll do it for this video on this supremely upgraded and possibly cursed Kaypro 4. I still can't believe that this thing boots and runs with all those exploded components on that homemade RAM upgrade card thing. And I also can't believe that it just magically started working after we took it apart and put it back together with Javier's candle next to it at VCF East. In the next video on this thing, we'll dig into that weird upgrade and replace some of those burnt up components and some of the wires. And then we'll see if maybe we can't get this thing online. But if you enjoyed this video, I'd appreciate a thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more Kaypro shenanigans like this, please subscribe down below. And thank you very much for watching. And a special thanks to B. Perkins, Camilla Noseda, Chris Allegretta, Chris Briggs, Chris Calderon, Chris Nelson, Daniel Hubbard, Greg from Hrutkay Mods, John Malman, Nano, and Scott Thompson, who are my highest tiered patrons, and all of my Patreon supporters who help to make these videos possible.